Today, I continue the conversation with Robert Falck, the CEO and founder of Einride, one of the most talked about tech companies in the world right now. They are developing a self-driving electric truck that doesn't even have a cabin. And today, we're going to learn more about the tech behind the trucks. Join us for an inspiring conversation. This is the Evolution Show. Welcome to the Evolution Show. I'm your host, Johan Landgren. The Evolution Show is all about connecting the dots to see the bigger picture and address some of the biggest challenges and opportunities of our time. And today we're back with the CEO and founder and inventor behind Einride, a Swedish startup that wants to develop a self-driving electric truck that doesn't even have a cabin. And today we're looking more closer into the technology behind the trucks. Welcome back, Robert Falck.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
As I mentioned, you're the CEO and founder of Einride, the Swedish startup that develops a self-driving electric truck. And today I thought we could look more into the technology behind the trucks. So I start with the idea, because most people might not understand that, but you're not primarily working towards being a new OEM, but you're focusing on creating a new ecosystem and being an operator, as I understand it. So could you tell us a little bit behind the business model behind Einride and what you want to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that new technology normally comes also with a new business model. And I think that the traditional challenges that we have when it comes to the market, we need to update with a little bit how you rethink the business model. So in a way, we are the truckers of tomorrow. We are literally the ones who operate and drive the trucks. And that also gives the opportunity to specify the hardware and what kind of technology we would like to use in when actually doing it. So what we are doing is we're literally creating a demand for this transition.
So maybe we can start with the T-Pod. It's the electric truck most people have seen. You're also developing the Tealog, and we'll come to that. So could you tell us a little bit about the specifications and the idea behind the Tealog?
The TLog.
The T-Pod.
Yeah.
T-Pod.
Yeah, it's literally a pod that is built and developed for transport needs. A lot of the current technology in the trucks, they are built from the perspective of the driver. Literally optimized for being the driver in the vehicle and for the current business model. What we've done is to design a vehicle that's 7 meters long. It roughly can be a total weight up to 26 tons. And it's built for logistics. So we optimize it from logistic needs and with the fill rates and everything that to optimize a logistic hub and spoke system with up to 300 meters and 300 kilometers in radius.
So what kind of market are we looking at? If you look at initially, the first, let's say the next couple of years, what do you think you can use the T-Pod for?
I mean, I think that what's going to be decisive is mostly how we see legislation, the actual industrial change. But our best applications is from warehouse to warehouse, from application from A to B. And our ambition is to address roughly between 50 and 60% of the transport volumes on Swedish roads today.
That's a huge market share. And obviously then you wonder, can they complement other transports, and what are the societal benefits with going with a smaller truck but that it's self-driving?
Yeah, I mean the overall filling rate in the transport system today is less than 20%. And most trucks are utilization-wise less than 40%. That means that they stand still, and when they drive, they're empty. So if you combine these two numbers, you get a staggering low figure. So less than 10% of the operational capacity is used in actually, if you see the transport capacity that we have. So it's and logistics always how you cut the numbers, but overall it's very inefficient system, and it's built on people making money from the system itself, but not necessarily the drivers. So it's either the big players making and selling trucks, or the ones who buying the transport service that makes the money.
So yeah, and what about, I was going to ask you, the cost savings. What can you say about that compared to a conventional truck?
I think what's very unique when you combine autonomous and electric is that you have a business case for applying electric today. That means that you can apply new technology to be extremely cost competitive. Over time, I think it will be a cost disruption. That means that we will radically lower price for transport, but it will take time. But I think that the potential for the technology will make a disruptive change.
You're also developing another truck called the TLog, which is more directed towards the forestry industry. Maybe you can tell us the idea and a little bit about the specifications as well.
No, it's literally the same specifications for size-wise. And the ambition is not to necessarily go out on a strip of road in the forest, but there are a lot of internal flows in logistic flows for forestry. So we're addressing the ones between in factory flows and application flows. That's just really where we see the market for these kind of technologies.
Have you had an interest for the Tealog as well?
Absolutely, even from New Zealand. So it's
so even from
New Zealand.
New Zealand, okay. Uh-huh.
So I think it's a global demand for that as well. So I think a lot of see what this will apply for, and I think that you can really do a lot of good in transporting electric if you start to rethink a little bit how it's done.
When can we expect, do you think, to see the Tealog in action?
Hopefully we will start to see applications during next year.
Okay, oh, that sounds interesting. So, okay, moving on. Why have you chosen an electric truck without a cabin? And yeah, you mentioned the cost savings. So, are there other benefits than just cost, so to speak?
Yeah, of course, and you can design and develop the system based on autonomous. And that's really, you can optimize it from that perspective, and you don't make any compromises. So you have to have the safety, you have to have the agility, you have to have the autonomous to make this as a really good solution.
And where will you build the trucks? Will they be built here in Sweden, or do you have plans elsewhere?
We work with several partners for the production, and exactly where the mass production will be done, it's still something we discuss with our partners.
And of course, since it's electric, you always have to ask, do you have access to batteries? Because it's something that bothers a lot of other OEMs at the moment, getting volumes at a short time and so on. Have you thought about, for example, Northvolt company? They are, obviously there's a long line of companies that want to get batteries from them here in Sweden.
Yeah, I think that there is very interesting dynamics, and we are not an OEM.
No.
So it's I think that the access to batteries is also the challenge of our suppliers. But we are very fortunate to have strong investors with great connections in that area. So I think that's for our perspective, it's nothing that I keep me up at night.
No, okay. When do you hope to see a large fleet of Einride? If you look maybe next year and maybe a couple of years into the future.
We will see substantial or sizable volumes of Einride vehicles during the next year and a half. So I think that we will be able to showcase how the future looks like during the next year.
Not so long ago, we had I talked to Anna Pernestål, which one of the guests here. She's an expert on self-driving technology at KTH, the director there. And when we talked about the future of self-driving technology and especially passenger vehicles, you have the challenge that even if you have, let's say, 1/10 of the number of vehicles on the road, the vehicles that are going around, they're actually driving more passengers, more kilometers per mile.
Yep.
Per vehicle. And how do you address that? Do you see that the similar could be a challenge for you as a heavy truck transport as well?
I think if we keep the system as it is today, there's definitely at risk. And I think that especially if you look at doing autonomous on the current fleet or the current diesel platforms, that could definitely make it the case.
Yeah.
But I think that the bigger difference between transport and human transport, I think that human transport, we don't really have a capacity problem. We have a peak problem. That means that it literally, when people go back and forth to work, then it's literally clogged. Then the other 24 22 hours is literally free. So I think that's something also worth mentioning in all this, that autonomous will not necessarily change the demand of the number of units for transport vehicles. I think we have way more potential by being more flexible how we work.
Of course, people may wondering what are the competition for you. You are a new startup and you're really disrupting a lot of ways, a lot of parts of the industry, both electric and self-driving. You're combining them, and even without a cabin. So where do you see in a large OEM stepping up, as a competition? Do you see that as an advantage, or do you see that as a challenge? What do you?
I think that our biggest challengers are fast-moving, software-based startups from Silicon Valley, well-funded with the right ambition. They will be our challengers.
It's in a very interesting article. It kind of. It woke a lot of thoughts in my mind. It's when you wrote an article in the Swedish magazine New Technique, where you talked about that we have a problem that most people are not discussing, especially not the authorities sometimes. And you want to electrify, you want to make things self-driving, but you're not working or having regulations that set a bar and make it clear that we want to have them electrified as well.
Yeah.
So we might end up with you have a really. I thought you captured it really well. You said it could be self-driving vehicles can be a curse or a blessing.
Yeah.
And so how can we make things change in a sustainable direction?
I think it breaks down as consumers. And I think that something that's, for me, not discussed enough is that the most important thing we do is not necessarily change the way we do things, but how we put demands on others and companies to make a change. If you look at the companies that's 100 worst polluters in the world, if we put demand towards their products, to change their products, choose different alternatives, they will quickly start to adapt and change. But we need to a little bit educate, because we're living in an era that we are a little bit misled. But what's most important, because the transport industry is roughly 40% of the CO2 emissions globally. But flight is maybe 3-4 of that. And I think we need to travel, because that's a change of IDs, that's a change of people. We get so much out of the better planet by meeting other people. But commuting back and forth to work, doing transport of goods, that's something we can challenge. That's something we can do differently. We should buy the furniture for people that do sustainable transport. We should buy our groceries for firms that do sustainable transport. And that's how you start to change. And let's look at the industry we are addressing. That's between 7 or 8% of the global CO2 emissions. And face the fact, it's a better alternative to go electric.
Yeah, and we had Anders Forslund here not so long ago, CEO of Heart Aerospace, and they're working to electrify the planes, but it's still, of course, regional and local and national distances so far. But that's the first step, at least.
For sure.
And we can have perhaps electric planes in Europe and so on. That's actually doable.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that's happening. I would like to move on to something that's close to my heart, and I think it's very important in your work as well, is the development of AI right now. It's going so fast. And I'm working a little bit on a book on that subject, so I feel it's a really interesting thing. But what's your thought about the AI development right now? Part of it, you're using it in my first question is how you're using AI in Einride in your trucks.
I think that AI is part of any sort of viable technology strategy that you have today. We currently are using a lot of machine learning, but I think it's for me it's a little bit how you apply the data and what you want to get out of it. I think that for a lot of the application when it comes to self-driving, it's better to so to say create smart way of applying the tactics than just go for brute force AI approach. So I think we are utilizing approach where we want to help the computer play chess, but first tell them all the rules. And I think that's a little bit of difference from some of our rivals do, where they just literally apply brute force AI in a lot of applications.
Yeah. Also in the article in New Technique, New Technology in Swedish, Swedish in English, you talked about the challenges of, the two primarily challenges we have today. If we talk existential challenges, we have global warming and we also have the fast AI development. And they create the two most urgent matters today for legislators to face. But the public debate does not connect how they can affect each other, you said. And I think it's a very important point. Can you explain what you mean there?
No, but I think that it's like all technology. It could be used for good or for bad. And I think that the moral compass in the discussion is that, like a very, very practical example is that AI is an essential part of making cars autonomous. And if you're going to apply autonomous and AI, we need to change a lot of works and we need to change society. But it could be potentially the benefit of creating a sustainable transport sector. But we as a society and a democratic society, we need to decide what kind of future would it look like. And that means also choosing what kind of should we use technology for. And AI could be a way to solve and address our challenges, but it also can be in the doom. So we need to understand exactly how to apply it and how we get the technology to work for our purposes.
Yeah, and I think it's great to hear that from a startup and a technology guy like you, because I think it's kind of a two ways of looking at it. Some are just going straight ahead, no questions asked. Others are thinking about this like you and realize that there are challenges and potential threats that we have to address. And also perhaps the most important that we talk about this publicly. If only you as the people that are involved and know the details, you have to use it in your work and so on. But others, they don't see how it could be used in a bad way.
Yeah.
So that's a really important thing. But more a little bit in details. Are you using data collection are you going to use that? You were going ahead in the vehicles, or what are you?
Yeah, I think that they're like all applications about a little defining the challenges you want to make happen, and I think that something that's not discussed enough in the context of AI is that even if it's machine learning or AI or any version of computer addressing a challenge, is about defining what you want to accomplish, defining the problem itself. That's actually the half, or I would say 90% of the work, to really clearly define what you want to try and accomplish. And that's not emphasized enough, and I think that's why we see a lot of companies buying in to say we're going to apply AI, but for what? What is the purpose of it? And I had the privilege to work a lot of big data systems and data sets and a lot of collecting data, and the challenges there were not necessarily to do the advanced calculations and optimizations and the AI application. It was literally to define the data set, to define what are we looking for in this data. Do we have the quality of the data that's required for this? And I think that when you look at, for instance, a company's perspective, if you have a challenge, you want to accomplish something, that's really what you need to define. For instance, if you want to have a answering service, so you want someone to answer a call center, that's a clear specified challenge. And I think that's a little bit where you should start before you literally just open-endedly say the AI is going to be applied.
Yeah, sounds wise. Okay, but finally then, what's the next step for Einride? If I would invite you here in 1 year from now, do you have any milestones you think that you want to see coming, or perhaps something you can share?
No, but first of all, it's about making actual change to scale with customers. We are very fortunate to have brave customers that are really pushing us to, we want it now. We wanted this, make this happen. And I think that going electric and going sustainable is something we actively work with to scale during next year. And then, of course, it's about going on public road and real applications, and also about I think that I have a personal dream to go to coast with T-Pod in the US. And that's something I definitely would like to see in the next couple of years.
Yeah, me too. Okay, but and I have to finish by saying, for transparency, that I am an investor in Einride. Well, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot, and I hope people understand a little bit more about the technology behind both of your trucks and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and also thank you for believing us. I think it's about brave people like yourself that gives us the ability to really work on making this transition happen. And I think that this transition will not happen without people making choices, both from investment side as commercials.
Yeah, thank you. If you were inspired as well, feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below. As always, we appreciate your feedback. Was it good or bad? In the next episode, we'll talk to another CEO and startup in Australia, actually. They are starting a bike sharing company. They have started a bike sharing company, which is really interesting to see as well, how that is affecting transports on another level in Australia. So I hope to see you then. If you want to see the videos as soon as they come out, consider subscribing. I hope to see you on Monday for the next episode.